Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have an awesome show for you this week. You might notice we're doing it a little bit differently. We are at Out of Office Garage. This is a car club in Birmingham, Michigan. So if you're listening to this on your phone, head over to the site. We've got a video component this week, and there's some pretty cool cars to see as you can look around. Great show for you this week. We're going to talk about the new Chevy Corvette ZR1. It's finally here. We've been driving some pretty cool cars, from our long-term Subaru WRX and the Honda Civic Type R. Lots of cool things to talk about. So with that, I'm going to bring in senior editor for all things consumer, Jeremy Korzeniowski. How you doing, my man?
You know what? It feels good to be here live recording a podcast with you guys. I'm doing great.
All right. And associate editor Byron Hurd, how are you?
Hey, doing great. Glad to be here.
All right, so let's just jump right in and talk some news. The Corvette ZR1, huge news, over 1,000 horsepower. The LT7 motor, which is a feat to behold, I would say. If you've checked out the pictures, it's really impressive. You saw this thing in person. What did you think?
I mean, you look at this thing and it's a lot of firsts and a lot of like returns for Corvette. I mean, it's the first factory Corvette with more than 1,000 horsepower. So that by itself is huge. 1,064 horsepower, which was more than we were even kind of hinted at. Like we saw rumors of like, oh yeah, it's going to be 1,000 horsepower. It's going to be crazy. And we're like, nah, all right, we'll wait and see. And sure enough, here we go. It's still rear wheel drive. It's still V8 powered. Now it's the first turbocharged factory Corvette. It's the first. Again, we said first one with over 1,000 horsepower and more than 900 pound-feet of torque. The fact that they didn't go to all-wheel drive, that they didn't electrify this at all, still leaves headroom above it. Like there's still theoretically room for that Zora that we've heard so much about with a big hybrid powertrain. But for now, this is the top dog, and it's ridiculous. And if you're a fan of like Corvette styling history or anything like that, the split window comes back for the ZR1, which is kind of special. And Taj, the chief engineer, was actually saying like, we were running the split window kind of look on the C8R, and no one really noticed. And it's kind of an iconic styling thing for Corvette to have that split rear window. And the fact that it was kind of hiding in plain sight and that they decided to like throw it in for the range topping ZR1. I mean, it's fun for Corvette enthusiasts. It's a nice little nod to history. And this is like, I mean, it's a record setting car. We know it's going to do at least 215 miles an hour. We know it's going to do 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds. And for a rear wheel drive ICE powertrain, even in 2024, that is nuts.
Yeah,
so.
It felt a little bit like a mic drop for Ted Juchter. He's the outgoing head of, the chief engineer for Corvette. So it really seemed like a walk-off. What did you think, Jeremy?
Okay, so Byron is the one who wrote the story. I read about it afterwards. I wasn't involved in the story production or anything. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to look and see what people's reaction to this vehicle is. Okay. And so I did that. I looked at, Instagram. I looked at our comments. I looked at Facebook, and something that was like a common thread through everything that I saw is like, oh, a lot of like Mopar fans are like, oh, Chevy finally caught up with Dodge. Okay. Let's take a step back here, guys. Yes, the Demon is extremely amazing. The ZR1 is going to be super amazing. These are not the same vehicles. I think Dodge did an awesome thing with the Demon. They're very clearly going to tell you, they launched it with a drag strip component. When Chevy launches this vehicle, there's going to be major racing with turns and long straights and braking zones, all that kind of stuff. Stop comparing these things. These are not the same thing. Be glad that we're living in an era where two American automakers, and I mean Ford too, to its credit, does super awesome, amazing things. There's amazing Mustangs out there, GTR, GTD, blah, 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 blah. These two cars are completely different. We should stop comparing them. We should just be happy that American muscle has hit this point where it's like, okay, you want to go to the drag strip, you want to dominate it, you want to put some slicks on, you want to get your front wheels off the ground in a straight line, buy a Demon. You want to blitz a racetrack, you want to do something like that, buy this 1,064 horsepower Corvette ZR1. Just be happy that we have these. And to your point, Byron, I would love to see this powertrain powering the rear wheel Corvette with some sort of electrified front powertrain. It could be a small one, but I mean, can you imagine what it'd be like getting the whole shot out of a corner with your front wheels pulling you through? I mean, this vehicle would be just epically amazing on a track if it had a little bit of power to the front axle. So here's hoping that that's in the plans.
So I was at the GM Tech Center in Warren just over a week ago, and one of the streets is actually named after Zora. So it seems to be like, yeah, sure, that's a nod to history, but they're leaving themselves some room to do a little bit more. We've heard some rumblings, hey, maybe someday Corvette becomes almost like a sub-brand,
Right.
even more than it already is. They could go up the scale, more performance. Who knows? Maybe they do something else and like go crazy and like spin it off or do like a crossover, like an Urus kind of fighter. I'm really going out there, but there's room to do it, I think.
There is, and it's not like they haven't already like shown their hand on the electrification. Like, you know, if there is some sort of further, you know, evolution of the ZR1 where they package that powertrain, I don't know if they can package it. I mean, cooling is going to be a massive problem. I don't know if it's possible. I'm just saying it's not beyond the realm of possibility based on just what they've already shown us that they can do.
So you saw this thing. What, like, enthusiasts, what do they need to know? What's like the surprise and delight? Is it as good in real life as it is in the pictures?
It's the sheer quantity of lightweight materials that you see in this
Yeah.
car. They've only released so far the dry weight, which is just a little under 3,700 pounds, as I recall, for the coupe, and closer to 3,800 for the convertible. Once you add fluids, oil, fuel, water, everything you need to actually get the car going, we're talking about 4,000 pounds. But when you consider that, like, a lot of these like high performance plug-in hybrid models we're seeing, the things we'd like maybe Corvette to chase with a Zora model, like you look at some of the curb weights on these and they get really out of control really quickly because of that battery. So the Corvette kind of just, it's all about add lightness. It's all carbon fiber. There's so little on it that feels substantial, but when you see it in person, you're like, the sum makes sense. Like, this is a substantial, impressive machine, and it just exudes power and performance. And yeah, I mean, the Corvette may not be the most beautiful car on the road, but it still makes a hell of an impression. Like, it is a thing to behold when it cruises by. And this is just all flash. The extra heat extractors, like the extra cooling vents, the big flow through hood design, like everything about it just makes an insane impression that you don't get from the base C8. And like, you know, to Jeremy's point, like when you look at the chassis, they had a cutaway there for us. All of the front axle integration that was there for the E-Ray, which is how they get the electrified axle. It's that front axle in the mid-range E-Ray. All of that is still present on the ZR1. So if they wanted to take ZR1 and electrify it, theoretically, we're looking at everything they need to do it. So they can just, you know, take these various parts from E-Ray and from ZR1 and throw them all together. And I think it's all there. But just looking at it right now, like, you see it both as this wonderful complete package, something that Taj can really be proud of. But on top of that, it's a canvas. Like, there's still more room to grow here. And Zora is hypothetical for now, but I mean, you see all the lines kind of pointing toward it here. So I would say it's still on the table, even though recently some of the stories we've been hearing are that this is it for the C8. But I'm skeptical because we haven't heard about a C9 really yet, right? So, and until the C9 is here, we haven't closed the book on C8.
And to your point, Byron, you talked about lightweight. Everything that I said about potentially electrifying the front axle, that goes against the idea of lightweight. So I feel like if there's going to be a pinnacle of C8 track performance, it's probably going to be the ZR1. Like, the only way that they could get around it is some sort of Formula One style small battery KERS system, where you recapture the energy on braking, you reuse it for that. Because I think that is more the Corvette ethos. People don't go out and drag race Corvette. They do, and it's fun to do it, but that's not the point. The point is setting lap times. So when we talk about these things, like, we're talking about like low power, out of corner, instant acceleration kind of things. When the rear wheels are losing traction, that's when you want the fronts to pull you along. The rest of the time, you want as little drag and as little weight as possible on that front end.
Well, it's an American exotic too, is how I look at it.
Sure.
For a considerable lower price point than Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, etc. It's from the design to the different elements of the tech, it really is like it's a tour de force for everything Corvette can do. And I think, to your point, Byron, the C8 has a lot of life left in it. To me, this still feels like a new special thing. It's the first mid-engine Corvette. I think they should, if anything, let this generation run out a little bit, iterate on it, Maybe go all the way up to the top. Do the Zora. I would love to see that. And then that gives them some breathing room to maybe do something else in the portfolio, because you see so many different things in there, from the powertrains to some of the cooling techniques that could work in other segments, which I know for Corvette's kind of blasphemy, but it could really work as a business case. So
Yeah. And I mean, if you think of it as like Corvette as a brand, we're seeing Ford develop Mustang as a brand. And you look at GTD, which is Ford's, race car for the road, which is kind of the closest analog that Ford has to something like the ZR1. We already know that's going to be a $300,000-ish vehicle. ZR1, we don't have pricing on, but it's probably going to come in under 200 from the factory. Markup is markup. I mean, we can speculate, but there's not much we can do about it. But when you look at that, like, Mustang's finally going to get to play with Corvette, and we already know that it's probably going to cost almost 50% more for it to play in that same field. So it kind of goes to show, like, Corvette has always kind of been in a realm of its own, and with Ford trying to like play and tap into that same space, they're having to reach a whole lot further than Chevy does to kind of get into that same performance sphere. So it's a very interesting time to be covering these kinds of cars, and especially like looking at Mustang being a little aspirational here, trying to go after Corvette and go after the world with a really big play like this. To see that Corvette's just kind of like, yeah, dust our shoulders off. It's another ZR1. We're good. It's still impressive, but it's something they've been doing for a while. They've been in this place.
If anything, this validates, I think, Chevy's decision to move that engine a little bit farther back. At the time, it was controversial, and I think most people were on board with it, but some people had to be kind of dragged kicking and screaming. I really think the fact that they could do this proves that it was the right decision. And frankly, if you want a front engine car, there's 7 generations of those out there for you. So
yeah, I'd be that guy. I'd go out and buy the last gen C7 with the front engine. Like, it's not so much that here's why. I'm not going to take this car to a racetrack and try to set lap records. I'm going to take it to a racetrack and try to set personal bests. So for me, the last generation of the front engine is more interesting than the first generation of the mid-engine. So I see where they're coming from with that. To your point, though, to continue moving the Corvette as a brand, as a aspirational vehicle that's like, look what the Americans can do for this price point versus what the Italians or the Germans or whoever does at the Japanese. You look at like the amazing supercars, the NSX, et cetera. Yeah, love the fact that General Motors is pushing boundaries with the Corvette.
All right. Well, that is the Corvette ZR1. Thanks for hanging out, guys. We are going to bring some new guys on here. We're going to talk about what we've been driving in the fleet. We'll be right back after this. All right, so now we're back and we're talking cars, and I want to bring in senior editor for all things electric and green, John Snyder. How are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Yeah,
this place is neat.
This is cool, right?
Yeah.
And fittingly in this car cathedral, let's bring in road test editor Zach Palmer. How you doing?
I am great. A car cathedral is a good way to put it. There is so much history around us. A lot of really awesome modern metal too, and maybe Porsches are the theme here.
Yeah.
They definitely have a plurality, if you will. There's a lot of them, and BMWs too. So let's talk about our long-termer, the WRX. That's it right there. It's been around since December, so we've had it for a while. I've really enjoyed it. I drove it in winter. It's everything you would expect from a WRX. I think it's been one of our better long-termers. Start with you, John.
Yeah, so I owned an 04 WRX for over a decade and have had trouble being excited about generations since then. But this one, I really like it. It makes me really want one. It makes me miss mine, but I would be happy with this one. Just so much fun to drive. It's a little stiff, but not too bad. You get used to it. And yeah, at a moment's notice, you can just have fun. Go from daily driving. Once you drop the kids off at school, hit those back roads and you're flying. It's awesome.
It gets so much attention. Part of it is the color. I think Zach, we could have gone with the blue, which is like the iconic look, a little more sedate, but the orange really grew on me. And then we sort of, I don't know, don't tell Subaru, we tried to make it into an STI. So you want to tell everybody what we did with that?
Oh, yeah, no, we just had some modifications installed to this actually. So we have the STI muffler, the STI short shifter kits, and the STI front strut bar on this WRX. And we've been driving it around a little since then. The exhaust is definitely a little louder. It's been one of my complaints throughout our sort of half a year with it so far. It's loud at startup. I think it's real quiet as soon as you get the revs up. Just needed a little extra something. And this certainly gives it a little extra something. I think I still need some more time with the short shifter kit, honestly, to see how I feel about that. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously Subaru doesn't make an STI version of it. You know, there's been the TR and, you know, so I guess you got to go to the aftermarket if you want to make it a little bit more than a WRX. But I mean, all that said, you know, sort of like you, John, I have not, you know, liked like the previous few generations of WRX, but this one has turned me into a believer, honestly. Like, it's much more of a car for me. The stiff suspension, the much smoother engine, you know, everything about it is much more my style. And it's honestly a car that I would consider putting in my garage.
And it runs on ethanol, right? We did that conversion.
We also, yes, runs on corn. I know. So,
alrighty. No, for me, I mean, I remember driving earlier versions of the STI earlier in my career, and there's parts of it that just were so intense. And I like the WRX's a little bit more balance. And I think this car really captures that. The design was also a little controversial when they rolled it out. Pretty heated debate. Where do you guys fall? Love it or hate it or somewhere in between?
I really like it. I mean, there's nothing really offensive about it. It looks like a WRX. I kind of like a little bit bigger hood scoop on a WRX, but other than that, you know, it's pretty good. The plastic cladding doesn't bother me at all. You know, it's meant to sort of tackle some of those soft roads too, so you don't want to ding up the paint. I think it looks really good, actually. And I prefer the sedan body style to, you know, some of the hatchbacks I've had, apart from, you know, the original wagon. That thing was cool.
No, I know that all of that plastic cladding has really garnered a lot of negative attention from the enthusiast community. I think it looks good, though. I really do. Like, the only beef that I have with how much plastic is on there is on the rear bumper. It's a little bit too much of a chin back there. And if there was a little more painted, as opposed to just the plastic, I think I would prefer that. But I do like sort of the rally ethos that you get with that plastic cladding. You know, you feel like you can really send it down some dirt roads, which, you know, sort of brings you back to the WRX heritage of, you know, it winning, you know, a lot of rally championships back in the 90s and then sort of turning into that street car. You know, it's sort of morphed more and more into a street car, a track car over the years. And I feel like this is sort of like, hey, let's sort of look at our history, find that, and I think it works on this new one.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also like sort of in that same camp of liking it, but I wasn't quite as liking it as much, I think, as some of you guys. But after having some extended time with the car, it's really grown on me. I do think the plastic, not ideal, but in this case, I think it works. It's very holistic, except for the back. To your point, Zach, that maybe a nip and a tuck back there. But overall, I think it looks pretty good. And it's definitely a modern evolution of where I think the WRX would land. But I mean, we got to talk about the powertrain. That the 6-speed manual, I think, is just a gem. I'm psyched. I'm going to drive this thing home and see what the STI short shift looks like. That should be fun. The clutch is, you know, fairly heavy, but it's not quite STI levels. And of course, that boxer, it's kind of rough, but I think it's a lot of fun. So I think they got that part of it right.
Yeah. 100%. Like, that was honestly one of my biggest problems with the previous gen WRX. The engine was it was a bit rough, to be honest. And, you know, this one is much smoother. Feels like it goes through the rev band a lot happier. It's not super peaky. You still got to work to get the power. You really do. But it's just much more of an engine of my style. A nice, smooth, happy to rev, boosted 4-cylinder.
And still has a little bit of its own sort of, you know, you get that boxer sound from it.
Yeah.
I haven't driven it since we put the new exhaust on it, and I'm really looking forward to the short shifter. That was the one thing that I sort of wished it had, but yeah, it's a lot more refined than WRXs of the past. You know, the engine, the transmission, especially. You know, previous WRXs, second gear, you know, it would just whine at you, and you know, sort of have a lot of lash. There's some little looseness in it. So yeah, definitely a lot smoother going down the road and smoother rolling through the gears.
All right. So let's shift gears over to the Honda Civic Type R. Just arrived into our fleet yesterday. It's parked outside. Bright red, beautiful car, very sporty. I drove it around a little bit. I took it to Kroger, took it a few other places. It's definitely I think it's a good evolution of the Type R. That, like, the shifter to me is amazing. It is just butter. I mean, so just start with that. I know you guys have driven the car. How are we feeling about the Type R these days?
Yeah, man. I mean, probably the best shifter in like any new car today. Like the only one that can come close to it is probably the 911 GT3. And even then,
that's a tall order right there.
I might still take the Civic shifter over that.
Wow.
Which is kind of funny in a $45,000 hot hatchback. But no, I mean, to your point, yeah, it's such a special experience to get in that car. And you know, whether you're going to Kroger, you're going to a back road, you're going to a track, it can kind of do everything. Like it's a perfect just do whatever you want car. You can just throw whatever at it and it's going to be like, all right, we're going to do this better than most cars. So no, I mean, some of the highest praise that I feel like I can give a car is that, like, I would actually like buy one of these. Like if I was buying a daily driver, a Civic Type R would be extremely high on my list. That and I know the other car that we're talking about, the Acura Integra Type S, both extremely high on my list. But what do you think about it, John?
You know, I don't even mind that it's not all-wheel drive. I think, you know, this is as close to all-wheel drive as you can feel in a front drive car. Just so well balanced. And yeah, that shifter, I feel like Honda nearly perfected the shifter, you know, a decade ago or more. And they've just somehow been able to refine it more and more through the years. And, you know, in this, it's so good. You just want to drive it. You just want to drive it and drive it and drive it. Whether you're driving it, you know, in daily driving. Again, kind of like the WRX in that way. It's got sort of that dual personality. You can do your daily driving in it, be comfortable, not too loud, not on, you know, doesn't rattle your teeth, but then it transforms you know, with your mindset. As soon as you decide to drive it a different way, it picks right up and just takes off and just does basically whatever you want. The steering's really good. You know, everything is just sort of telepathic when you're driving it. It feels great.
Almost as good as the shifter, I think, is the steering. It's just so direct, very linear as well, kind of cliched, but such a great just point and shoot setup. And honestly, some other things like the interior, I think, was better than I expected. You get in there, the seats are supportive, comfortable even, I would say, compared to some very sporty seats where you get in and you're like, oh, geez, how do you get in here? They're almost like this as far as bolsters, very livable. I like the interior. I like some of the cues they did too. Like there's it says like Type R or something on the dash. The front Honda badge is red, which almost is like an old school kind of look. They got all the details right, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like this is, you know, obviously everyone thinks of the Civic Type R as a sort of boy racer thing, and obviously it has the big wing, has the big wider fenders, but no, I mean, you hop in there and, you know, you can be happy to daily drive this thing every single day. It has the new Civic interior design with that gorgeous honeycomb vent all the way across. I mean, and then, like I said, like I've put a lot of miles on one of these on, you know, a bunch of really great back roads. I drove it actually also on the tail of the Dragon. So yeah, I've driven this car a lot. And it's sort of an addicting car to drive, honestly. You just sort of get in a rhythm with it, and you almost just kind of stop thinking about driving because it's just such a point and shoot. There's a ridiculous amount of grip wherever you go. The fact that it doesn't have torque steer and that limited slip differential just kind of pulls you through every single corner. You know, it almost feels like a bit of a cheat code sometimes when you're on like a really demanding road. and it'll keep up with pretty much anything that you throw at it. So yeah, it's a special car, I think, and one that we're probably going to be talking about for years and years to come.
Yeah, it definitely still has that boy racer look on the outside, but is benefited tremendously from the improvements that Honda has done to the Civic in general. They've just made that car more mature, and the interior is so much better materials, better design, feels more grown up, and that applies to the Type R. And it's more comfortable getting in and out of than it was before. The bolstering's not too crazy. You don't get goosed when you sit in it the wrong way. A lot more comfortable than before, and just looks way better. And I feel like it's grown up with us.
Yeah, exactly.
The sort of boy racer style. Yeah, I was into that when I was a younger guy, but the Type R has grown up with me.
No, I agree completely, and I can deal with the wing in the back. It's just it's sort of like part and parcel of what it is. But then you get the interior, and you're like, oh, hey, all right, this is great. I like this. It does feel like a very the highest evolution of what the Type R should be. So I'll pose this question to you guys. And price points are a little flexible here. You got the Rex behind you, Integra Type S, Civic Type R, anything else in the field. Which way are you guys going?
I would, I guess, I would go with the most expensive one. I would go with the Acura Integra Type S.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I'm a little biased. I'll just throw it out there. I own a 2001 Acura Integra GSR.
It's on that top rack over there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not mine, but I would probably love for it to be mine as well. I would take a second one, but no, so I would love to park another Integra beside it in the garage. And I also kind of like some of the things that the Type S does more than the Type R, just as far as an actual daily driver use case. It has a different suspension tune on it, which is a lot more livable on the street. Civic Type R, it's pretty stiff, and even stiffer when you put it into the Plus R mode. It's pretty much only suitable for a racetrack. I also just sort of love the design of the Acura a little bit more than the Honda. I love those almost Hellcat-ish wide body fenders that it has on it. And I also love the exhaust. It is notably louder than the Civic. Brings sort of that almost Focus RS, Hyundai Elantra end, sort of pops and bangs into the equation. So it's a little more childish and also a little more grown up at the same time. And also the sheer luxury features that you get. You can get heated seats, a heated steering wheel if you get the Type S. And to be honest, it drives just as well as a Type R when you're really pushing it. The only place where I think I would take the Civic over it is if I'm on an actual racetrack. So, and then you might want that 11/10 that you can get with the Type R over the Acura.
You make a strong case for it. I was going to say Civic Type R, but now that the way you've laid out such a balanced portfolio of points, maybe I would go Acura. What do you think, John?
I haven't driven the Acura, but I think that the Civic is what I would choose between those two. I just don't need the extra luxury stuff. I don't want something quite that precious that I have to maybe worry about as much. I would definitely take the Civic over the GR Corolla, despite the cost difference. I would, if it were me deciding between the two, it would be between the Type R and a WRX, frankly. And that would be a tough choice, really tough choice. I feel like, I don't know, the Type R is probably more exciting. The WRX is a little more my style. And, I would already have ideas of things I would want to do to the WRX, which, is something that evokes some imagination and gives you, a little bit of a project to do. Yeah. So.
All right. I like the Integra. To me, it's almost like quiet luxury. It is luxury, but it's not over the top, like Porsche or something that, I think it's a little understated. So I like that. And I also like the Type S approach. I think Acura has done a nice job of building out that sort of, I would call it a sub-brand, but that kind of giving it a rep, which I think is cool. All right, so let's talk about our other long-termer. This one's been a little more controversial. This is the Mazda CX-90. It's a plug-in hybrid. We've had it for a while. We've put a lot of miles on it. I just got back from up north, as we say here in Michigan, with it. Zach, I think you picked it up. You may have found some dog fur in it. I really vacuumed that thing out. It's been a little polarizing. It has a lot of strong points, but it also has some shortcomings, particularly as it relates to the powertrain. So why don't we start there? What do you think about that?
Yeah, man, the powertrain is, I guess, the one thing that really, really bugs me about this car. I do like a lot of things about it, but yeah, if we're gonna zero in on that plug-in hybrid powertrain, it's not really a great one. It really feels like, it needed another year or two in the cooker from Mazda. It's unsmooth in in all of its transitions from electric to gas. The transmission it's also unsmooth. would probably be the best way to put it. It's an 8-speed that Mazda developed itself, and just not exactly ready for prime time there. When you do run it under electric only power, it's also still shifting through that transmission, and you still do feel those rather unsmooth shifts even when you're under full electric power. And it doesn't exactly make up for it in terms of performance. Like, it's not particularly quick. It doesn't feel like it's all this much better than the inline 6 option. And it's just, I think, having as much time as we had in it, I would tell everyone in a heartbeat, go buy the inline 6 because the rest of the car around that plug-in hybrid powertrain is honestly really good. But I will let you guys speak to that.
Straight 6 is a gem, and I do like the steering, although I'm not sure it's what I want in this vehicle, and I like the styling.
Yeah.
But Mr. Senior Editor for all things electric, the powertrain is it's a little buzzy and not a good way.
Yeah, it could use some refinement for sure. Definitely some weird, unsettling clunks when it shifts, especially in electric mode. It feels a little iffy. I kind of wonder what was that. But I imagine after, I did a couple long trips with it, and I did mostly start to forget about those things. And I thought the performance was fine. I think it's definitely got enough power. It's got pretty good range. I took it for a drive, sort of a lot of country roads. I had it fully charged. It was showing 23 miles of electric when I got in it. I ended up driving it about 33 miles on electric that's with 10 minutes of being plugged in to a level 2 charger at the grocery store. But I thought that was great. And, the range on it, the overall range with the gas is really impressive. I was able to drive it all the way to Chicago from Ann Arbor, and then most of the way back without having to stop for gas. Was able to drive it all the way to my cottage, 250 miles, and most of the way back while doing stuff up north, lots of driving up north without having to stop for gas. So, it's kind of a good road trip warrior in that way. And you can put a lot of stuff in it, a lot of people. It's a good 3-row. My son, he's a big kid. He loves sitting in the way back. And you could still fit a good amount of stuff behind the 3rd row. So yeah, it was awesome for road tripping, which is mostly what I've done with it. Like you said, it could have been developed a little bit more before it was ready for prime time. But I think overall, I could live with it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a slightly more positive version of where I land. I think I would maybe not live with it. I think I would either go with the straight 6 or something else, because the world is your oyster in this segment as far as 3-row SUVs. So many are very good. They offer different takes on powertrains. The interior to me was just fine. I like what they were going for, but it didn't blow me away. Our long-term Hyundai Palisade from a couple years ago, I prefer that a little bit. So kind of a mixed review, I guess, on my part. But
well, I mean, the Palisade is an awesome 3-row vehicle, but you're stuck with that V6. It's a good V6, but I like having the option of a plug-in hybrid, and this one has its faults, but I think I would choose it over the inline just because you that electric range is good. It's usable, and you can drive, pretty fast with just under electric power. And for most of my driving around town, I wouldn't, take a sip of gas. I wouldn't need to,
That is a strong element in its favor. Is it's like 26-ish miles of range, which I charged it up once, ironically, at Ford's sort of technology center in downtown Detroit. It's by this old train station, which they're revitalizing, which is really cool. And they had all these chargers in an adjacent garage. I'm like, this is great. And they were mostly free. So I topped it off and went to the Detroit Lions draft. So it was a great night of the Mazda CX-90. And that is strong. I want to like it more than I do. It's just then you start driving it for me and I'm like, this is a little clunky, but road tripping wise, it's dynamite. Put a ton of stuff in it, tents, golf clubs, everything you would need. A very large dog who was very comfortable. The whole family was in there. So, solid, but I think they'll probably, if they continue this, I think they'll do better for Gen 2. So
for sure. Yeah. And, just the car surrounding it is so solid. It's, if you like a car that drives well and steers well and feels, pretty confident in the corners, the CX-90 is good for, a 3-row SUV. It's one of the best driving 3-row SUVs out there.
It's fun to drive.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Steering is good. I really like it.
So I think, if they can refine the powertrain a little bit, it'll be dynamite.
All right. So let's talk about summer driving. We have had an abundance, a bumper crop of all sorts of sports cars.
Amazing cars.
Other things coming through the fleet. It's been great. Off the top of my head, we've had the Huracan Sterrato, the 911 Dakar. We've had a Miata. We've had a 718 Boxster. We have our own WRX. We have a Civic Type R. I've got to be leaving something out because we've had it seems like everything.
We had an AMG SL 63.
Oh, how could I forget about that? Right.
I think we've had the X5M competition, X6M competition,
X5 plug-in hybrid.
Yeah,
we've had lots of great stuff. Yeah.
What has been top 1 or 2 for you guys?
That's easy for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's really hard. But go ahead.
Hyundai Ioniq 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
God, that car is just so cool and so much fun. I like the i6 and I like the suspension, and Joel will argue with me on this. We argue back and forth about it. But man, the Ioniq 5 just shouldn't be as fun as it is.
Oh, it's
but it is just an absolute blast. It just rips around corners, get the tires spinning. It's, the rear biased. And then, it settles right down. It's really roomy inside, really neat interior, very lounge-like. So it's this sort of weird dichotomy. You've got this, you feel like you're sitting maybe on a sofa in a living room, but then you're burning through, some tight S's. Just love that car, and I drove some cool stuff. The Miata is up there though. The Miata is really, really fun. Just the rotation you can get from it is unlike any other car out there. But the Ioniq 5 easily, it just makes me want one so bad. That's the car that I would go out and buy if I was going to buy a new car right now.
Okay, it's up there for me. I respect that. I remember a few years ago when it first came out, I was at North American Car of the Year testing, and it was up for, I think it was Utility of the Year, actually. I think it was a crossover, nominally anyway. And people were lined up to get into it. It was like, when is the Ioniq 5 coming back? Where is it? How much time do I get in it? So, there is that, it has the Riz, as the kids say.
Yeah.
And I love the 1980s kind of vibe, too, to just go all sorts of generational crossover here. I love the front end, the hatch. It's sort of a throwback to some of that concept car that Hyundai rolled out. I think it was a Giugiaro one with elements of it from the 70s.
Oh,
and they kind of threw some of that into this. I respect that a lot. It's definitely not the top of the deck. That's a deep cut, but I like it. What do you think, Zach?
Oh, man. I should have mentioned the Urus S as well.
Oh, how could we forget about that?
I know, right? 2 Lamborghinis. But no, I think my number one definitely has to be the 911 Dakar. That that car was a special car to drive. I mean, so I was actually talking to a few Porsche folks at the 992.2 first drive about it like a week after I drove it, and I was like, guys, you need to make this a regular thing, because like you're only making 2,500 of them, and I'm sure that they sold out instantly for massive markup, and a lot more people would really want to buy one of these things and drive them. It is easily the most fun that I've ever had in any 911. And I've driven the 911 GT3, 911 Turbo, Cabriolet, Targa, you name it, sort of thing. And I had more fun in this than all of them. I mean, it's a 911 that you can sort of drive like a Honda CR-V or a Toyota RAV4. Like, you don't have to worry about ground clearance. You don't have to worry about potholes or driveways, or just, you know, say you have to go down a dirt road. Go for it. Like, it's great. It literally has a rally launch mode that is designed to do that. I tried it out. It is so much fun. It just kind of digs into the dirt and launches you down, you know, in that very violent Porsche way. And then even on road, it shocked me. I was like, there's no way that this lifted car on all-terrain tires could actually feel like a Porsche 911 and handle well, but it does.
Oh yeah.
Against all odds, you know, these Pirelli Scorpion all-terrains, super stiff sidewalls, great steering feel, great road holding. The car just surprised and shocked me at like every single corner. Like I was expecting this sort of like, all right, made in a garage, you know, just not, you know, it's an off-roading special, you know, it's not supposed to be this great fun thing, but I would drive one every single day if I could, if I had $220,000 to put one in my garage. Yeah, I loved that car.
That is my second one. I think it is probably the most unique and special car that I drove. I think it has all the things you just said. It has a character that expands upon what I think the 911 is, makes it something different in a way that I didn't think the Huracan Storado did for Lambo. I thought that one was it felt a little too like Volkswagen AG almost, which I wonder why it would feel that way. So, you know, I love that car, but I'm going to go with the 718 Boxster. I drove it it was like late in May. It was warming up. I took it out one night at like 8:45, you know, the nights are getting nice and long. Drove it until it was totally dark out, top down, watched the sunset. Just great engine, great manual transmission. The looks are pitch perfect. I was literally inspired. I came home, I opened a beer and wrote a column. It just flowed right out. That's how I think, that's writing. That's, you know, why this is such a great job, you know, and it was really enjoyable. Great car. I think it's still, and Zach, you did a piece comparing like the Boxster from the first generation all the way to now. And I think it does a good job of maintaining its original ethos. You know, it really, like, it's only 2 inches longer or something like that.
It's only 2 inches longer, 1 inch wider, almost the exact same weight.
Mm-hmm.
You look at
that's insane.
Like, you look at how much a 911 has grown over the years, and then you look at the Boxster, like, it's really not much bigger and much different than it was originally, which, I mean, props to Porsche. That's awesome stuff.
No, it was a very memorable way to kick off summer. So, yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out. We're going to bring back Jeremy and news editor Joel Stocksdale. We're going to talk Tesla, Mercedes, and some other things. We'll be right back after this. All right, so I want to welcome Jeremy back. We're going to talk all things Tesla, and we've got some pretty hot Mercedes that Joel has been driving. This is news editor Joel Stocksdale, so welcome to the show. Why don't we start with you? A couple of really hot Mercedes that you drove in Europe, is that correct? Tell us about this.
Yeah, so I was out in Germany, flew into Stuttgart, and drove kind of between Stuttgart and Lake Constance, kind of on the Swiss and German border, and was driving 2 powertrains in slightly different models. It was the Mercedes-AMG GT63 SE Performance and also the SL63 SE Performance. And the very long name comes with kind of a complicated powertrain as well. It's a plug-in hybrid powertrain. It combines the twin-turbo 4-liter V8 from AMG with a 200 horsepower electric motor in the back, which also gets its own 2-speed transmission and a battery pack that's designed for high discharge and high performance. And both of them make the same output. It's 805 horsepower and 1,047 pound-feet of torque. And they're both, immensely powerful and fast, and that's a lot of fun. I call the GT version of it, which I got to drive on some unrestricted Autobahn, an apex predator of the Autobahn, because, everything gets out of your way. You can go, whatever someone is doing, you can match it with that car, and they will move out of the way, and you can continue to build speed. I got to 150 miles an hour. They both look phenomenal. They're long and curvy, very luxurious interior. The only thing is that both of them, they feel like they're mostly about bragging rights. Like they're the ones that you get when you want the most of each, like the most power, the most torque, the fastest version so far. And the thing is, most of the time, I feel like character-wise, you get about the same from just the regular 63 one, the non-hybrid one. And I also kind of bring that up because the plug-in hybrid system doesn't do a huge amount. It's only got 8 miles of range. It's hard, like if you own one in the US, I don't think I would say that you should plug it in even, especially because like it will recharge itself quite quickly. Like you can basically run it like a normal hybrid. So it seems a little bit weird to spend all this money to get a smaller trunk and all of this extra complexity to go, like on the GT, it's a tenth or two faster to 60 and has like 3 miles an hour faster top speed than the non-hybrid one. So yeah, it's just a little bit odd. And like the current GT also doesn't feel like it's not much more track oriented. So you're not necessarily putting all that power to use anyway. So, yeah, kind of oddly mixed feelings. Like I like both of them, but I think they would be served better with slightly different kind of powertrain decisions.
It's interesting just how much Mercedes, like just technological muscle they're putting into this part of their lineup with the AMG GTs, with the SL. I just drove the SL 63 and thought it was, an absolute firecracker. Really enjoyed it. To me, that was more than enough. And then what you did over in Germany is just like, that's even more like on steroids. So, they're really going hard at Porsche and even some of the other like the Italian exotics as far as like what you can get if you still want to stay with Mercedes. And that to me seems like the takeaway. I don't get all of the electrification things here. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't seem to really make sense. But hey, if that's what they want to do, so be it. Did you have a preference between the two?
So the GT has slightly firmer suspension tuning, which I think I did like a little bit better. Now, I liked having the soft top on the SL. And the reason why I'm also kind of talking about both of them is because at this point, the GT and the SL are darn near the same car. It's basically just slight styling changes, and one's a convertible. Something that I did really like about the SL was, you get to hear the V8 more, but at the same time, it was nice cruising down quiet German country roads with the engine off in that electric mode. And it had me feeling like, boy, what I would really, really like is a full electric SL, one that's just completely quiet and like is dedicated to having like battery that's usable, like good electric power.
More than 8 miles of range?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And similarly with the GT, I think what I'm more interested in is going to be the GT 63S Pro, which is actually the track car version. Like it doesn't have any of the hybrid stuff in it. It's way more aggressive on suspension. That's the one that's going to be like the track car. And that's the thing. I feel like both of these cars would be better served going in slightly more differentiated paths and slightly more kind of committed paths like that. Let the SL become more of like a quiet, comfy tourer and let the GT be like the sports car that it's always been.
That makes sense. And you mentioned electrification. This is a good segue to Tesla. There is an updated Model 3. You drove that, Jeremy. You also owned a Model 3, right? What do you think of this? I know Elon Musk has talked a lot about trying to make like this alleged $25,000 car. And we're all kind of curious, is that on its own platform? Of course, that took a back seat to like the robo-taxi development that's now been pushed back to October. And, some people think, hey, maybe take the Model 3 or the Model Y and just kind of strip it out. And that gets you kind of close to 25 grand. We're not entirely sure where he's going to do with that because he certainly doesn't tell us. But where do you think Tesla's at right now? And what do you think of this new Model 3?
Well, I mean, first of all, you mentioned Musk. I think at this point, anyone who's paying attention is taking anything he says with a very hefty grain of salt. He's never been, Tesla has never been on schedule with something that Musk has said is going to come out at a specific time. So as far as the $25,000 Tesla, at this point, I am pretty sure we're never going to see that. The pricing progression that's happened since everyone's been talking about a cheap Tesla has changed the game. I don't think there's going to be a less expensive version. If there is, I'll be surprised. It makes a lot more sense to decontent the platform that they already have. The funny thing about Tesla, though, is that pretty much all of them come loaded with everything that they have. You turn things on and off via software switches, depending on what you paid for, but they all come with everything. They'd have to drastically change that model if they were to come out with something that's going to be $10,000, $15,000 less than what they're currently selling. I'll be surprised if it ever actually happens. So getting rid of that idea and just focusing on the most recent version of the Model 3 specifically. As Greg mentioned, I happen to own the original version. Mine is a 2023 model. Not that Tesla really goes strictly by model years. They kind of roll the updates out when they come. The most recent one, I think it's a little bit of an improvement. The interior looks like a little bit different. The front end, it's just a lot about the styling changes are just different. They're not necessarily better or worse. They're just, if you're interested in looking like you've got the freshest model, then definitely the new version is going to be what you're looking for.
And even then, it doesn't look dramatically different.
It doesn't.
It's just a mild facelift.
Yeah, it's kind of funny if you look back at Tesla styling history. The Model 3 came out and everyone's like, wow, that's a really pretty car. But it had that kind of oval-shaped gloss black grille. It was unnecessary. There's no need for a grille when you've got a fully electric powertrain. So, even most modern cars that have grills they just use little itty bits that pass air through. So it's kind of like this unnecessary styling element. So they got rid of it. They went with that kind of slab fronted, kind of a little bit of a concave look. And that's one that mine has right now. And I think maybe we'll look back at Tesla history and, that'll be like an era. The era of that kind of blunt nose front end, because it looks like they're doing away with that. If we think that they're going to go with this more streamlined Model 3 front end. On one hand, I think it probably is a little bit of an improvement. Like history will look back and say like, yeah, okay, that's more normal looking, but it is more normal looking. And I think a lot of people who buy Teslas, it wasn't a buying consideration for me personally, but a lot of people like, they like the look of the car. They like it to stand out a little bit. This does a little bit less of that. Like if you're going to park it next to a Corolla, do you want it to look more like a Corolla or do you want it to look more like a Tesla? The interior is a little bit more interesting. And Joel's seen these in person too. I think he did our first preview of it. I think that there is a learning curve with Teslas in general. When you buy one, you got to get used to it. The new one kind of just extends that a little bit more. Anything that Tesla can do to get rid of physical controls anywhere, they generally do. It took me a while when I got my Model 3 to figure out that not even the steering wheel has adjustability until you go into the center console. They're doing, or the center screen. They're doing that and basically everything. That's a very long-winded way of saying I don't think that the updates to the Model 3 are going to impact its sales in any meaningful way. If you wanted it before, probably you're still going to want it. I don't think it's going to dissuade people from buying it. I don't think that's going to cause this like new influx of customers coming into it. The changes are pretty minor. I think the rear end changes make it look a little bit better. I think the front end changes make it look a little bit more mainstream, for better or for worse. The interior, I don't think is either better or worse. It's just different and continuing down that minimalistic kind of feel that Teslas have inside in general. I think more interesting is the changes that they're making to the battery chemistries, to the motor arrangements. They're coming out with new versions that have more miles, are a little bit quicker. When I say more miles, I mean more range. That is much more meaningful to me than the small updates they've made to the actual vehicle itself. I do, however, hope that that is going to make its way through the rest of the model range. You look at a Y right now, and it's still got the kind of the older look to it. I think when you introduce something new, you might have that little bit of hesitation from buyers because they're expecting it to happen on the rest of the lineup. So here's hoping that whatever changes they're making, again, for better or for worse, that they kind of make their way through the rest of the lineup. But yeah, just to sum it all up, the changes, they're not meaningless. They make a small impact, but I don't really think that it's different enough that people are going to be like, oh, that's the new Model 3. It's really just, it's mid-cycle refresh in the very strict sense of mid-cycle refreshes. Not a whole lot changed.
Did you notice much in the way it drives, like any differences, or was it pretty much the same?
You know what? I think most of the meaningful changes that they made were made along the production line.
Oh, right, just kind of continuous improvement.
Yeah, a friend of mine's got what year did they come out? I think he's got like an 18 or a 19, and when I drive my 23 back to back, my 23 drives basically like the new 24 does. There's some changes that were made earlier. It's a little bit quieter inside, a little bit less boomy in the cabin. The ride is slightly improved. I think they've made like incremental improvements around. They probably have made some small changes to the 24, but were they super impactful about the way that it drives? Not particularly in my, not from behind the wheel.
All right, so that is our Tesla report. Updates on the new vehicle, if you will, the mid-cycle refresh, and just all things Tesla. You guys want to hang out? We'll spend some money.
I love spending other people's money, Greg.
Let's do it.
All right. We'll be right back with spending my money, spending your money. All right, guys, it's time to spend some money. This is an update from episode 825. Pranav writes, family of three, toddler in a car seat, living in the city of Chicago. Great area. Current car and two prior cars have been VW Passats. Currently has a 2008 VR6 sedan with 145,000 miles on the clock. Probably time to get a new vehicle. It's been great. We have roof bars and a roof box with extra cargo space when that's needed. Like many Chicago households, our garage is off a one-off alleyway, so anything too large will not work. Been prioritizing cars under 195 inches long, okay? We have family and friends around the Midwest, so they end up doing some road trips. About 300 miles, give or take. They'll get you pretty close here, actually. But they don't have a regular driving commute. Weekly driving is around town and fairly short distances for errands. There's plenty of days a year that they don't drive at all. We expect to remain a one-car family for the foreseeable future, with me being the primary driver, either solo or with the family. What we've considered: a Volvo V60, Volkswagen Tiguan, Audi A6, Volkswagen Arteon, and would love to hear our recommendations. Our earlier one was the V60 Recharge, and Pranav wrote back and said it looks like he wants to wait for the new Audi A5. Now, to be clear, the wagon is not coming here that we know as of right now. If you're interested in the sedan, hey, that's great too, but just some clarification there as far as if you're really hoping for more room in the A5, it may not be the wagon you're hoping for. So with that, that's the criteria. Let's take another crack at this one. Joel, we'll start with you. What do you think?
Okay, so a lot of those choices I think would be strong options. I think, and Jeremy and I talked about this a little bit beforehand, the Tiguan is fine, but generally just not all that amazing to drive. And based on like previous vehicles owned and what you're looking at, I just don't really feel like it would be satisfying. Just the things that jump to my mind would be like on the new car side of things. Honestly, I'm kind of thinking CX-5 and CX-50 would be really strong options, particularly if you get like the turbo ones. And simply because they offer a lot of space, they offer relatively premium interiors, and they're genuinely very nice to drive. In some ways, I kind of feel like Mazda is sort of doing like more old school VW better than VW is, kind of a slightly more premium, but for not a huge amount of money feel. As for used, you might want to look at like Audi A4 all-road, not offered super long, but it would offer more space than like Arteon or the A5 hatchback. And also, I mean, be a very comfortable, nice driving vehicle. And kind of leading into sort of Jeremy's potential suggestion, if the price is right and like provided that all the service history and stuff looks good on it, maybe even a used Macan. But I will stop there because that kind of leads into Jeremy's suggestion.
Great lead in. I did a little bit of searching, and I cast a few 100-mile net from Chicago and found a few certified pre-owned Porsche Cayenne e-hybrids.
Wow, that's an impressive search. Okay.
Yeah, and they came up in a price range that if you are legit looking at a new A5, it would actually be around the same price to get a 2020, 2021 Cayenne e-hybrid certified pre-owned with the extended warranty on it. You're looking probably about 20,000 miles on it, so it's taken the initial depreciation hit. It's a great car. The engine itself is lovely. It's shared across the premium VW group line. The e-hybrid component makes it even better. You mentioned he's got a garage. Very likely you can get that sucker plugged in. If you we're talking about the e-hybrid, right?
I mean, basically, like genuinely, almost any plug-in hybrid is more than fine on like 120 volt charger.
Yeah,
because it's such a small battery capacity that you don't need a whole lot of voltage and current to actually charge it up. Like you can charge it overnight on 120 volt, no problem at all. Yeah. And that's mainly when you're going to be plugging it in, because if you run out of range out in the real world, you have a gas engine.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it'll give you the storage space, something that, you mentioned roof racks, right? Something that they'll use. Maybe you won't have to quite as often. It won't take the mileage hit if you're driving with it. So yeah, that was the thought that came up to me when I was doing my searching. So yeah, 2020-ish, 2021 Porsche Cayenne e-hybrid.
Okay, I like it. I'm going to go. I don't actually recall what I originally picked, but the first time from episode 825, but hey, you can check that out. I'm going to look at a lightly used X3. I think that would be nice for a family of three. I think, especially thinking of the many times I've driven around different parts of Chicago, it's always tough looking around corners. It's like it's tight. So I think the X3 gives you a little bit of visibility there, which could be nice as well. So check that out.
Actually, I just had another idea since you brought up BMWs. Countryman plug-in hybrid might be good because it's kind of sporty, kind of funky, kind of fun.
They're actually really fun to drive.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And then you've got the plug-in option also.
And if you run out of room, you're already used to using roof.
That's true.
Capacity.
That would look good on a Countryman, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, they're a family of three, so it's not like a huge family.
And what is that? Well, you plug it in, it's 20, 24, 25 miles of range, something like that.
It's respectable, yeah.
Yeah. Around town, Chicago city driving, you might not even have to use your gas engine.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Final answers, I guess. Okay. All right, guys. So that's all the time we have this week. Thank you for watching and listening to the Autoblog Podcast this week. We've had a lot of fun hanging out with the editors here at Out of Office Garage. Be safe out there. Shout out to our producer and the whole studios team for making us look and sound good this week. And always, be safe out there. We'll see you on the other side.